for me, any form of social injustice is just wrong. Society should be a place where everybody is equal before the law, irrespective of your positioning, your status, your family, or your background.
Gay men and women face violence all around. Sadly, much of this violence really is being justified by laws and policies that are clearly and nakedly discriminatory to a same-sex orientation. So at this point, one is forced to wonder, since when did violence become a solution to anything? My guest and I on set today will explore these concerns and perhaps prefer a solution to this tragic reality. Hello there, welcome to Untold Facts, where we tell it just the way it is. I'm Moses Omogena. So with me on set today, I have very interesting personalities and professionals on their right. I have Abayomi here on set, Abayomi Aka. Abayomi is a lawyer and a human rights activist. Through his legal background, he advocates for the promotion of rights for all regardless of sex, gender, creed, or race. I also have Emeka Chukwuemeka Chukwuma. Chukwuemeka is also a lawyer with a specific focus on corporate, criminal, and civil law. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us.
Thank you. Sure.
Thank you. All right, first things first. Emeka, as a lawyer, your years of practice and experience, whenever you see a victim, a gay man or a gay woman, that has been, battered or perhaps, suffered from outright violence, what really comes to mind?
The first thing that comes to mind is human rights, the rights of a person. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Was there due process, and what are the state actors doing about it?
All right, Yomi?
I mean, like he said, basically it's all about humanity. It has nothing to do about being gay or being straight or whatever, whoever it is that you are. Basically, simply put, a human being had been hurt, or the rights of a human being have been breached. And in that regard, it's looking at it from that human rights perspective that, okay, fine, what necessary precautions or what necessary actions have been taken in defense of this person, and how has this person been catered for in that regard? Has this person sought all, been able to exploit all justice systems that we have, and what are the state actors doing about it, basically? All
right, from your years of of practice and exposure, really, and from the many cases you might have seen or handled, can you paint a picture of extreme cases of violence that a lot of people, those in the same sex orientation, might have suffered?
Let me just use this statistics-wise. As opposed, or as of December 2015 to 2016 March, we've had about 105 different extreme cases of human rights violations that have been perpetrated against persons within the LGBTI community. And this is ranging from blackmail and extortion, supposedly curative rape, unlawful arrest and detention, instances of kidnap, and worst cases death, all in regards or relation to same-sex loving persons or same sexual orientation or gender identity.
Most of the cases, of violence, when we see on YouTube, we see these YouTube videos, very horrifying YouTube videos of someone being battered, some of them extreme cases being even burnt alive, jungle justice, so to speak. You cannot but wonder why they are so bitter. You could see that viciousness in their eyes. What do they really stand to gain, Emeka?
They basically don't stand to gain anything, but any idea or any philosophy that places a class of people above another class breeds violence.
So what do you think is the most effective way of bringing perpetrators to justice, really?
Well, the United Nations have done a great job in highlighting 5 rules that any state must fulfill. First and foremost, the state has to protect the right to life, right to liberty, right to the dignity of a person. The state must also respect freedoms of association, right to assembly, also safeguard these rights. Also, the states have to repeal laws that forbid freedom of expression. They have to repeal or decriminalize laws that are against same-sex marriage or homosexuality. That those are really key issues that a state must always focus on. Yeah.
All right. Yomi, Chukwuemeka just gave us how the ways in which what the long-term work really government needs to sit on its toes and really enforce these laws to safeguard fundamental human rights. But I'm going to come again to your experience, your level of exposure. How would you judge the level of success, or how effective do you think the government has been able to achieve this in Nigeria and perhaps other African nations?
Without sounding offensive to anybody, I'd say woefully.
Okay.
Because in regards LGBTI persons, or should I say sexual minorities, I would say are not in the government radar at this point in time. Despite the fact that you have representatives or delegates of Nigeria going on international human rights forum like the Universal Periodic Review, which Nigeria was under the review about I think some years back, telling the world that Nigeria has no interest in witch hunting LGBTI persons in Nigeria. I mean, I can make a reference to the recent case of the 6 persons in Edo State who currently have been arraigned before a magistrate court based on their sexual orientation and gender identity. I mean, we have laws that criminalize same-sex activities in Nigeria, even way before the Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act. But regardless of the fact, this law specifically say, or in reference, makes attribution to the practice and not the being in itself. But then you find the government going to the extreme by prosecuting and unlawfully arresting persons just by plain issues of identity.
It's quite an interesting, and at the same time it could be very frustrating. The fight could really be frustrating because now let's assume that justice has been carried out on the perpetrators or those found guilty of carrying out violence against same-sex orientation. You find out that often more than not, the victim always ends up being the victim at the end of the day. Now, take for example, justice was being carried out, perpetrators have been arrested, put behind bars. Now, the victim still has to face his family. He still has to face his boss. He still has to face his colleagues at work. And God helps him, Linda Ikeji carries the story, he still has to face social media.
Exactly.
So how can we successfully find justice, for a victim and still retain his identity so he's, he can eventually come out whenever he wants to? How can we really do that?
I think, first of all, decriminalization of discriminatory laws have to be put in place. Because when you have an enabling environment, you have an individual exude his full potentials. It is possible because at the long term, you have so many ripple effects. In that regard, you have psychological trauma, you have a few other things which limits this person's potentials, destroys this humanity of this person. In a way, you're literally having a carcass in existence, a living dead. And in that regard, when you talk about having access in a non-enabling environment, it further drives this person into a state of disarray. So first thing first, decriminalizing discriminatory laws, raising awareness and sensitization on issues of sexual orientation and gender identity, because I'd say the knowledge on sexual orientation issues in Nigeria is very low. There are few people who understand what sexual orientation is. Sexual orientation in itself is very vast and broad. I mean, I've not really particularly met somebody who can tell me categorically he's well learned or to a certain 100% knows everything on sexual orientation, because every day things change. Every day new research is being done, new facts are being brought out, and new analysis are being made based on sexuality. And you find out that sexuality in itself is very, very fluid and vast. So when you talk about protecting individuals, it doesn't just rely on the decriminalization alone, but raising awareness, creating sensitization, as man in itself fears what he doesn't know. And in that sense would instinctively want to defend itself. So basically creating awareness and decriminalizing discriminatory laws would be a good start to start having such things.
And in addition to what Yomi just mentioned, in addition to creating awareness and decriminalizing laws, there also have to be policy directions or even in creation of laws that prevents violence against sexual minorities, like especially at the workplace, and even in churches, in hospitals, creating these laws, policies that prevents discrimination against sexual minorities.
All right, but do you really think it is possible, to fight for justice and still protect the victim's identity?
It's very possible. Let's take, for example, crimes committed against minorities, kids, children. The same way the identity of kids are protected from such public institution, or even in courts, the identity of the child is never disclosed, or nobody gets to see the face of the child. Such things can apply to sexual minorities. There is always a way to prevent the exposure of the identities of sexual minorities. And at the end of the day, it's about the posture of the government. If the government's posture is to safeguard the rights of people regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity, that will flow through the entire system. Even when you go for interviews in corporate organizations, sometimes they ask you, are you attracted to men? Are you attracted to women? That in itself breeds discrimination. When you're being asked at a job interview if you're attracted to men or women, then you will begin to wonder, is my attraction to men or women going to affect my function here, or would it determine me getting the job done? So those kind of policies, government policies, needs to be put in place to prevent any form of discrimination against sexual minorities.
All right. So, from what Emeka just said, I think the media too has a lot, function really there in helping to withhold people's having a respect to their identity, their privacy and their identity really. But help us, with this strategy really, or maybe I guess the word strategy is quite vague to use here, but help us to understand from the point where a gay man or a gay woman is being bullied or ridiculed or threatened by society, and he needs help. Where does he go from there? What would you advise him to do at that point in time?
Ordinarily he should be able to access every form of justice systems that we have. Apart from initially exploring alternative dispute resolution, he should be able to have access to lawyers, to courts, and entire justice procedure. But as we have it right now, it's a bit streamlined. But then in essence, I work with an organization that renders support for all regardless of sexuality. And we always, through alternative dispute resolution, apply these measures on LGBTI cases.
Emeka, now as a lawyer, you get a phone call and someone is complaining and saying that he gets hate messages and threats by his neighbors just because he's been suspected of being gay. As a lawyer, how would you go about that?
For me, it's best I will advise the person to approach the state actors like the police or the law enforcement agencies. But then again, our law enforcement agencies, are they active? Are they knowledgeable about how to protect the rights of sexual minorities? Many of them, or even once you tell them that you're being discriminated based on your sexual orientation or gender identity, the usual burden of proof is moved to you. You have to then prove to them that you are actually not gay or you're straight before they attend to your case, or the simple fact that you're being the police or the law enforcement agencies basically would not support you in the sense that they would believe you're guilty or you caused whatever actions that are being meted to you. So
the main fact that you even brought that case would even raise eyebrows.
Yes, exactly. Raise eyebrows.
Asking you yourself, are you even gay?
Yes, exactly.
I can imagine a policeman asking that question.
In that regard, and in terms of experience, when you have community members who go to the police to actually access services, maybe in the protection of their life or property or anything as of, and it is in relation to sexuality, you find the victim being the same person who has been remanded at the police station, being extorted and raising a kind of worms based on the sexuality and forgetting the main cause of the violation or the reason why that person came into the station. I mean, there have been reported cases where we've just had police officers, just by basis of expression, would this whole search and stop thing they do literally have committee members stand on the road, try to identify themselves, invade on their privacy, despite the policies and the laws that have been put in place on same-sex relationships or issues that have to do with same-sex persons. And if you, upon substantiation of all these media reports, largely over 45 of them were actually falsified by the media. So in regard, if you make your plight known, okay, fine, my life is under threat in my environment based on my sexuality, it's more like a double-edged sword, because you're further dipping yourself into the mud. You further put yourself in a state of disarray and state of insecurity, because what? The idea of the police, or the kind of notion that is being looked at it from the state actor's point of view, is that, oh, this is against the law. Not even having clear understanding of what the law states. The next thing they do is, oh, okay, then they arrest you because you be gay. Oh, yeah, constant for your right statement. Where be the person? In some instances, they can even tell the person, oh, now the two of you, oh yeah, you go, you stay behind. And it's something that keeps going on and on.
From what you've said so far, going to the law enforcement agencies or officers, it's even a risk in itself. Would you then suggest that they should never go alone, perhaps go with a lawyer, who can stand for them? Because sending them alone really is like you're sending a sheep to wolves den at the end of the day.
I mean, taking a lawyer along with you, yes, can be beneficial to you, depending on the aspect or the way you table your matter. But I'd say for anybody, or for any LGBTI person who is out there who feels his right or her rights have been violated by both state or non-state actors, it's best to attack it from a human rights point of view. If my life is in danger based on my sexuality, I have to go to the police and say, no, my rights are being infringed upon. My life is in danger. If they ask why, it's left up to you to use your discretion on how to put it to place. And also understanding the situation, understanding the circumstance which you find yourself is very important, because what? Like I said, if you go there based on that, you further become the victim the second time.
Wow.
But then, if you put it right, make a formal complaint. If you're lucky not to face any kind of trouble, yes, you can use that as a buttress to defend your case at the upper hand in the court, and instances like that.
Okay, so I think that's a wrap, really, and it's because from what we've said so far, it's a risky and quite a frustrating fight, but it's a fight nonetheless that has to be won at some point. But thank you so much, Yomi. Thank you so much, Chukwuemeka, for these conversations.
Yes, thank you.
And yeah, from what we've said so far, it's a risky game. Same-sex orientation, and violence seems to be a very, tragic synonym that goes on, in Nigeria and all the African nations. But you must learn to fight for your right, and of course, fighting for your right, you equally have to know them. So if you have a threat message, if you are being bullied, by members of society, know what to do. Find your support system, find human rights organizations like TEARS, go to the law enforcement agencies, go to a human rights, call the court and call a lawyer as well. These people could, help, table your cases and seek justice for you. It's been Untold Fact. Don't forget to use the hashtag Untold Facts on Twitter, at TEARS Nigeria on Instagram, and of course on Facebook is the Initiative for Equal Right. I'm Moses Umogina, and it's bye for now.